The front door hadn't even finished closing after my father's funeral when my older brother tossed my suitcase onto the porch. "You need to leave," he said without looking me in the eye. My stepmother stood behind him with her arms folded, while my younger sister stared silently at the floor. "This isn't your home anymore," my stepmother said coldly. I looked around at the house where I had lived for 28 years, hoping someone would speak up. No one did. I quietly picked up my suitcase, thanked them for everything, and walked away. They thought they had won. What they didn't know was that my father had spent the last 3 years preparing for this exact moment. My name is Claire Hudson, and this is the story of how the people who threw me out of my own home ended up begging me to let them stay. My father built our family home with his own hands long before he married my stepmother. Every brick reminded him of my late mother, who passed away when I was only 12. After she died, I became more than just a daughter. I became Dad's helper, his friend, and eventually his caregiver. As he grew older, I handled the bills, repaired the house, cooked meals, and drove him to every medical appointment. My brother Daniel rarely visited unless he needed money. My stepsister Olivia only came during holidays to take family photos she could post online. My stepmother constantly reminded Dad that everything should belong equally to the family, but she never spent a single afternoon helping him maintain the property. One autumn evening, Dad and I were sitting on the old wooden porch watching leaves fall across the yard. He smiled quietly and said, "People think a house is made of wood and stone. They're wrong. A house belongs to the person who keeps it alive." I laughed and changed the subject because I hated hearing him talk like that. Looking back, I realize he was trying to tell me something. 6 months later, Dad was diagnosed with heart failure. His health declined quickly. During those final months, I barely left his side. I slept in the chair beside his hospital bed, learned how to manage his medications, and promised him I would never let the house lose its warmth. The day before he passed away, he squeezed my hand and whispered, "Everything is already taken care of. Trust me." Those were the last words he ever spoke to me. After the funeral, my family wasted no time discussing the inheritance. My stepmother acted as though she already owned everything. Daniel walked through every room putting colored stickers on furniture he planned to keep. Olivia asked whether she could convert Dad's workshop into a gym. I stood quietly in the kitchen making coffee for everyone because it felt easier than arguing. Then, without warning, Daniel told me to pack my things. According to him, the lawyer had scheduled the reading of the will for the following week, and until then I had no right to remain in the house. My stepmother agreed. Rather than fight, I left with one suitcase and rented a tiny apartment across town. It was painful, but I kept remembering Dad's final words. "Everything is already taken care of." A week later, we gathered at the attorney's office. My family arrived smiling, already discussing renovation plans for the property. The lawyer greeted each of us politely before placing several sealed folders on the table. She began by reading Dad's personal letters. Mine thanked me for every hospital visit, every repaired fence, every shared cup of coffee, and every ordinary moment we had spent together. By the time she finished reading, tears blurred my vision. Then she opened the legal documents. Several years ago, she explained, Mr. Hudson established a living trust. My brother interrupted confidently. "Fine. Let's get to the property." The lawyer nodded. The family residence, surrounding land, workshop, savings accounts, investment portfolio, and all personal property have already been transferred into the Hudson Family Living Trust. Daniel smiled. "Exactly." She continued reading. "The sole trustee and sole beneficiary of that trust is Claire Hudson." The room became completely silent. My stepmother blinked several times as if she had misheard. "That's impossible," she whispered. The lawyer calmly placed certified copies of the trust documents on the table. Every signature had been witnessed. Every page had been notarized. Every transfer had been legally completed years before Dad's death. There was nothing left to contest. Daniel slammed his hand against the table. He wouldn't do this. The lawyer looked directly at him. Your father left a handwritten letter explaining his decision. She unfolded another page and began reading aloud. To my family. A home should belong to the person who filled it with love rather than expectations. Claire gave me her time when nobody else could spare an hour. She protected this home long before anyone wanted to own it. I am simply making the law reflect what has already been true for years. No one spoke. Even the air felt heavy. Over the following weeks, my family hired attorneys hoping to challenge the trust. Every lawyer told them the same thing. The documents were airtight. Dad had followed every legal requirement. There was no fraud, no pressure, and no mistake. Eventually they gave up. 2 months later, I returned to the house alone. Dust covered the porch where Dad and I used to drink coffee. I unlocked the front door with the same key I had carried for years. Everything looked exactly as we had left it. His reading glasses still rested beside his favorite chair. His old jacket still hung near the hallway. I cried for nearly an hour before beginning to clean. I repaired broken shutters, planted fresh flowers beneath the front windows, repainted the fence and reopened Dad's workshop exactly as he had left it. Every improvement felt like another promise kept. Then, one rainy evening, someone knocked on the front door. It was my stepmother. She looked older than I remembered. Her voice shook as she quietly asked if we could talk. She admitted they had lost the expensive house they purchased expecting inheritance money. Daniel's business had failed. Olivia had moved away. She apologized for forcing me out after the funeral. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I invited her inside for tea. I forgave her because carrying anger would never honor my father. But forgiveness didn't change ownership. She understood that before leaving. Today, every Sunday afternoon, my nieces and nephews visit the house. We bake Dad's favorite apple pie, tell stories about Grandpa, and sit together on the same porch where he once shared his wisdom with me. Sometimes visitors ask how I managed to keep the family home after everything that happened. I simply smile. People often believe inheritances are decided inside courtrooms. The truth is, they're decided years earlier by everyday acts of kindness, loyalty, and sacrifice that nobody notices at the time. Every evening before locking the front door, I run my hand across the old wooden railing Dad built decades ago, and I remember his quiet voice saying, "A house belongs to the person who keeps it alive." He was right. And every light glowing warmly inside that home is proof that love always leaves the strongest foundation.